Las Vegas, the Venetian Casino Resort, May 13th, 2022, 4:15 a.m. In the pre-dawn silence that settles over Las Vegas between the last desperate gamblers and the first hopeful tourists, senior cage clerk Amanda Torres begins her routine preparation for morning cash transfers. The vault operations area hums with the quiet efficiency of a multi-million-dollar machine, winding down from another profitable night of gaming. But as Amanda reviews the secure staging area where cash carts await armored transport pickup, she discovers something that will send shockwaves through the casino industry. An entire deposit card is missing. $12.9 million in chips and cash that should be sitting precisely where security protocols demanded. The vault shows no signs of forced entry. No alarms have been triggered. Security cameras reveal nothing unusual during the critical overnight hours when the theft must have occurred. The only evidence is the faint shadow of a man pushing a cleaning cart through service corridors at 3:47 a.m. Footage so routine that it had been overlooked during initial review. He wasn't a gangster with connections to organized crime. He wasn't a high roller with inside knowledge of casino operations. He wasn't even an employee with access to secure financial areas. He was Raymond Dorsey, the night porter who had spent 8 years being invisible to everyone, until he made $12.9 million disappear into thin air. Before we dive into how the most overlooked employee in the casino became the mastermind behind one of the most audacious thefts in Las Vegas history, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Subscribe for more incredible true crime heist stories, and if this video is eligible, don't forget to hype it. Your engagement gives this channel a real boost and helps more people discover these amazing stories. Raymond Dorsey embodied the perfect paradox of modern service work. Simultaneously essential and invisible, trusted with access to extraordinary wealth while being paid wages that barely covered basic living expenses in one of America's most expensive cities. At 52, he had spent 8 years perfecting the art of professional invisibility that allowed him to move through the Venetian's most secure areas without attracting any attention from security personnel or management. Born in Detroit during the city's industrial decline, Ray had learned early that survival often depended on not being noticed by people in authority. His childhood had been marked by economic hardship and family instability that taught him to observe carefully, speak little, and blend into whatever environment he found himself occupying. These skills, developed through necessity, would eventually make him ideally suited for both service industry work and sophisticated criminal activities. Ray's path to Las Vegas began with a series of manufacturing jobs throughout the Midwest that gradually disappeared as American industry moved overseas. By his 40s, he had accepted that his future lay in service work rather than skilled labor, and Las Vegas offered the kind of steady employment that could provide basic financial security for someone without specialized education or training. The Venetian hired Ray in 2014 based on references from previous employers who described him as reliable, punctual, and completely unobtrusive in his work performance. His position as night porter represented the bottom rung of casino employment. Minimum wage work that involved cleaning, maintenance, and general support duties during overnight hours when customer traffic was minimal. Ray's shift began at 11 p.m. and extended until 7 a.m., covering the critical period when casino operations transitioned from active gaming to financial processing and preparation for the next day's activities. During these quiet hours, he moved through areas that few employees ever saw, cleaning spaces that were essential to casino operations but invisible to customers and most staff. His official duties included maintaining cleanliness in employee areas, service corridors, counting rooms, and the secure zones where millions of dollars were processed nightly. The work was physical, repetitive, and poorly paid, but it provided Ray with unprecedented access to the casino's internal operations and financial procedures that generated enormous wealth. Ray's personal life was as unremarkable as his professional duties. He lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment in a complex 25 minutes from the Strip, drove a 15-year-old sedan that he maintained meticulously, and followed routines that reflected careful management of extremely limited financial resources. He had no spouse, few close relationships, and no hobbies that required significant spending. His divorce 10 years earlier had been finalized without significant assets to divide, and his relationship with his adult children was limited to occasional phone calls on holidays. Ray's social isolation was complete, but appeared voluntary. He seemed to prefer solitude to the complications that came with maintaining relationships with people who live very different lives. But Ray's isolation provided advantages that would eventually enable his criminal activities. His complete lack of social obligations meant that he could focus entirely on observing casino operations without distractions. His financial desperation, combined with daily exposure to enormous wealth, created psychological conditions that made criminal activities increasingly attractive. Most importantly, Ray's position as night porter made him essentially invisible to casino security and management. He was part of the infrastructure rather than a person, someone whose presence was noted only when his duties weren't performed adequately. This invisibility extended to security cameras, which recorded his movements but rarely attracted human attention unless specific incidents required investigation. Over 8 years of overnight work, Ray had developed encyclopedic knowledge of casino security procedures, employee schedules, and the movement of cash through various departments. He understood which areas were monitored closely and which were considered low risk. He knew the timing of security rounds, the blind spots in camera coverage, and the routines that govern cash handling during overnight operations. The knowledge had accumulated gradually through careful observation, rather than deliberate intelligence gathering. Ray's natural tendency to notice details, combined with years of access to secure areas, had provided him with information that would be invaluable for criminal planning. By 2022, he possessed the technical knowledge and access necessary to attempt sophisticated theft operations. The Venetian's overnight cash processing operations represented a complex system designed to manage hundreds of millions of dollars while maintaining security adequate to protect against both external and internal threats. The procedures involved multiple departments, sophisticated technology, and carefully orchestrated timing that ensured customer funds and casino proceeds were properly secured between the end of gaming activities and morning armored transport. Ray's cleaning duties provided him with legitimate access to virtually every area where cash was processed, counted, stored, or prepared for transport. While he couldn't enter the most secure zones where actual counting occurred, his responsibilities included maintaining cleanliness in adjacent areas, service corridors, and staging zones where cash carts were temporarily positioned during various processing activities. The system's security depended heavily on compartmentalization. Different employees handled different aspects of cash processing, with no single individual having complete access to all procedures. Cage clerks managed customer transactions. Counting room personnel processed daily receipts. Security guards provided physical protection, and vault personnel managed secure storage. Each department focused on their specific responsibilities without comprehensive oversight of the entire operation. But Ray's position as night porter allowed him to observe all these departments during their most vulnerable periods. While security personnel focused on protecting against external threats, and employees concentrated on their specific duties, Ray moved through secure areas performing cleaning tasks that made him essentially invisible to security oversight. The insight that would eventually cost the Venetian nearly $13 million came during Ray's observation of cash cart staging procedures in early 2022. He noticed that filled carts were periodically positioned in service corridors for brief periods, while counting room personnel completed documentation and armored transport personnel prepared for pickup activities. During these staging periods, which could last several minutes during busy nights, cash carts containing millions of dollars sat relatively unattended, while employees focused on coordination and paperwork rather than physical security. The carts were in secure areas with camera coverage, but the routine nature of their placement meant that security personnel rarely monitored them closely. More importantly, Ray realized that his cleaning activities provided legitimate reasons to be present in these staging areas during exactly the periods when cash carts were most vulnerable. His cleaning cart was similar in size and appearance to cash transport carts, and his movements through secure areas were so routine that security personnel rarely paid attention to his specific activities. Ray began systematically studying the timing patterns that govern cash cart staging, documenting which nights generated the largest amounts, when carts were most likely to be briefly unattended, and which routes provided the best opportunities for accessing staging areas without attracting security attention. His observations were disguised as normal work activities, making them invisible to management oversight. The critical discovery came when Ray identified specific camera blind spots in service corridors that could potentially provide cover for manipulating cash carts without being recorded. The blind spots weren't complete. They provided only brief windows of invisibility, but they were sufficient for someone with detailed knowledge of camera placement and security monitoring procedures. Ray also discovered that his legitimate access to maintenance supplies included items that could be adapted for criminal purposes. Cleaning carts could be modified to create hidden compartments, maintenance tools could be used to bypass simple security measures, and his key card access provided entry to areas where stolen cash could be temporarily concealed. Over several months, Ray began testing the limits of his access and the security system's sensitivity to unusual activities. He experimented with slightly modified cleaning routines, tested how long he could remain in various areas without attracting attention, and identified the specific procedures he would need to execute successful theft operations. By April 2022, Ray had developed comprehensive understanding of the opportunities and vulnerabilities that could support large-scale cash theft. His criminal planning was hidden within legitimate work activities, making it virtually impossible for security oversight to detect his transformation from model employee to potential master criminal. Ray's transformation from struggling service worker to sophisticated criminal began with careful observation rather than active criminal intent. His 8 years of night porter duties had provided him with detailed knowledge of casino security procedures, but it wasn't until early 2022 that he began systematically analyzing these procedures for vulnerabilities that could support theft. Operations. The first phase involved documenting the exact timing and routes used for cash processing activities. Ray began keeping mental records of when different departments completed their activities, which corridors were used for transport, and the specific security measures that governed each aspect of overnight operations. His observations were careful and systematic, but disguised as normal work-related attention to detail. Ray discovered that security procedures were designed primarily to prevent external theft attempts, armed robberies, break-ins, or organized crime infiltration. The system wasn't optimized for detecting internal theft by employees who already possessed legitimate access to secure areas and understood normal operational procedures. More importantly, Ray realized that security personnel were conditioned to ignore certain types of employee activities that appeared routine. His cleaning work was so familiar that security guards rarely questioned his presence in any area where his duties might reasonably take him. This conditioning created opportunities for criminal activities that would be invisible to normal security oversight. The breakthrough insight came when Ray began studying the specific procedures used for cash cart transport between counting areas and staging zones. He noticed that carts moved along predictable routes at predictable times, with security protocols that focused on protecting the carts during active transport rather than when they were temporarily stationary in staging areas. Ray also began analyzing the physical characteristics of cash carts and identifying ways that their contents could potentially be accessed or transferred without obvious evidence of tampering. The carts were secured with locks and seals, but Ray's maintenance responsibilities provided him with tools and knowledge that could potentially overcome these security measures. The most critical component of Ray's criminal education involved understanding how his legitimate cleaning equipment could be modified to support theft operations. Cleaning carts were large, compartmentalized, and rarely inspected by security personnel who assumed they contained only maintenance supplies. With careful modification, a cleaning cart could potentially transport substantial amounts of stolen cash while maintaining the appearance of routine janitorial equipment. Ray began experimenting with modifications to his cleaning cart that would create hidden compartments capable of concealing cash without affecting the cart's normal appearance or functionality. The modifications were subtle and carefully designed to avoid detection during casual inspection while providing sufficient space for large-scale theft operations. He also studied the specific types of cash containers used in casino operations, learning their dimensions, weight characteristics, and the methods used for securing their contents. This knowledge was essential for planning transfer operations that could move cash from legitimate containers to hidden storage without creating obvious evidence of theft. The timing component was equally important. Ray needed to identify specific periods when cash carts were most vulnerable, security oversight was minimal, and his cleaning activities would provide natural cover for criminal operations. His analysis revealed that certain nights and specific time periods offered optimal conditions for attempted theft. By late April 2022, Ray had completed his criminal education and begun developing specific plans for attempting large-scale theft of casino cash. His scheme would exploit every vulnerability he had identified while leveraging his reputation for reliability and invisibility to avoid triggering security concerns. The psychological preparation was perhaps the most challenging aspect of Ray's transformation. After 8 years as a model employee, he needed to overcome the ethical constraints and professional loyalty that had previously defined his work performance. The decision to betray the trust that employers and coworkers had placed in him required fundamental changes in his moral framework and self-image. Ray's preparation for attempting large-scale casino theft required developing capabilities and resources that extended far beyond his legitimate cleaning duties. His plan demanded technical modifications to equipment, detailed intelligence about security procedures, and logistical arrangements for handling and disposing of stolen cash that could exceed $10 million. The first challenge involved modifying his cleaning cart to create hidden compartments that could transport substantial amounts of cash without arousing suspicion from security personnel who might observe his movements through secure areas. The modifications needed to be invisible during casual inspection while providing sufficient storage capacity for major theft operations. Ray's approach was methodical and technically sophisticated. Using his legitimate access to maintenance areas and supplies, he gradually assembled materials that could support major structural modifications to his cleaning cart without creating obvious evidence of tampering or criminal preparation. The work was performed during off hours in storage areas where his activities wouldn't attract attention. The hidden compartment system that Ray created was a masterpiece of criminal engineering disguised as routine maintenance equipment. The modifications included false bottoms, concealed access panels, and weight distribution systems that maintained the cart's normal appearance and handling characteristics while creating substantial hidden storage capacity. Testing the modified equipment required careful planning to avoid detection, while ensuring that the hidden compartments could handle the weight and bulk of large amounts of cash. Ray conducted systematic tests using substitute materials that approximated the characteristics of casino cash containers, gradually refining his system to ensure reliable performance during actual criminal operations. The second major challenge involved developing methods for accessing cash carts that were secured with various locking mechanisms and security seals. Ray's maintenance responsibilities provided him with tools and expertise that could potentially overcome these security measures. But adapting maintenance techniques for criminal purposes required careful study and practice. Ray began acquiring additional tools and equipment through legitimate channels, disguising his criminal preparations as normal expansion of his maintenance capabilities. Lockpicks, cutting tools, and specialized hardware were obtained gradually through suppliers who served the maintenance industry, with Ray's purchases appearing routine and unremarkable. The practice required for developing criminal locksmithing skills was conducted in maintenance areas during periods when Ray's activities wouldn't be observed or questioned. He studied the specific types of locks and security systems used for casino cash carts, gradually developing the technical skills necessary to access secured containers quickly and without obvious evidence of forced entry. The third component involved establishing secure storage and transport capabilities for handling millions in stolen cash during the critical hours between theft and final disposal. Ray needed locations where stolen money could be temporarily concealed, and vehicles that could transport large amounts without creating suspicious activity patterns. Ray's solution involved identifying abandoned or underutilized areas near the casino where stolen cash could be hidden for brief periods while he completed his normal work shift and established alibis for his whereabouts during the theft timeframe. The locations were carefully selected to minimize detection risks while providing secure access during the hours immediately following planned criminal activities. Transportation arrangements were more complex because Ray's personal vehicle wasn't suitable for managing the volume of cash that successful theft operations might generate. He needed access to larger vehicles that could handle substantial cargo while maintaining the appearance of legitimate activities that wouldn't attract law enforcement attention. Through careful networking within the service industry community, Ray identified potential sources for temporary vehicle access that could support his criminal activities without creating traceable connections to his legitimate identity. The arrangements were disguised as normal personal activities, helping friends with moving projects, borrowing vehicles for maintenance purposes, or participating in legitimate community activities that required transportation resources. The final component involved developing disposal methods for converting stolen casino cash into usable assets that couldn't be traced back to the original theft. Casino currency included both standard bills and specialized casino chips, each requiring different conversion techniques and disposal channels. Ray's research into cash conversion methods revealed various approaches, including structured deposits, currency exchange services, and underground networks that specialized in laundering gambling proceeds. Each approach involved different risks and costs, requiring careful analysis to determine optimal strategies for his specific circumstances. By early May 2022, Ray had assembled all the components necessary for attempting sophisticated theft of casino cash on a massive scale. His criminal infrastructure had been developed gradually over months of preparation, with each element disguised as legitimate personal or professional activities that wouldn't trigger security attention. May 12, 2022, represented the convergence of conditions that Ray had been monitoring for weeks. The Thursday night preceding Mother's Day weekend had generated exceptional casino revenues, requiring extensive overnight processing that would create optimal conditions for his carefully planned theft operation. The combination of large cash volumes and busy operational activity would provide perfect cover for criminal activities disguised as routine cleaning duties. Ray arrived for his 11 p.m. shift with the same professional demeanor that had characterized 8 years of exemplary service. His interactions with security personnel and other overnight employees were completely normal, providing no indication of the extraordinary criminal operation he was preparing to execute within hours. The evening's cash processing activities proceeded according to Ray's careful predictions, with counting room operations generating substantial volumes that required multiple transport runs to staging areas. By 2 a.m., the patterns that Ray had studied for months were developing exactly as his intelligence gathering had suggested, creating the operational complexity necessary for successful theft. The target that Ray had selected was a high-value cart containing proceeds from the casino's most profitable gaming areas, including VIP rooms, high-limit slots, and premium table games. Intelligence gathered through his cleaning duties indicated that this particular cart typically contained between $10 and $15 million during busy weekend periods. At 2:47 a.m., Ray began the final phase of his preparation by positioning his modified cleaning cart in service corridors that provided access to the staging area where his target would be positioned. His movements were routine and unremarkable, appearing to security personnel as normal cleaning activities during the quiet overnight period. The critical moment arrived at 3:42 a.m. when counting room personnel completed processing and positioned Ray's target card in the staging area while preparing documentation for armored transport pickup. The cart contained $12.9 million in mixed cash and chips, representing one of the largest single concentrations of wealth that Ray had observed during his criminal planning. Security footage from this period would later show Ray approaching the staging area with his cleaning cart, while counting room staff focused on completing their documentation procedures. To observers, Ray appeared to be performing routine maintenance activities in the vicinity of financial operations. Nothing unusual or suspicious in his behavior or positioning. At 3:44 a.m., during a brief window, when counting room personnel had moved to adjacent areas to coordinate with security staff, Ray executed the theft operation that he had planned and practiced for months. Working with practiced efficiency, he accessed the target cart and transferred its entire contents to the hidden compartments within his modified cleaning equipment. The transfer operation took less than 90 seconds to complete, but required precise timing and technical execution that demonstrated Ray's months of careful preparation. Each movement was deliberate and efficient, designed to minimize exposure time while ensuring that stolen cash was properly secured within his concealment system. At 3:47 a.m., security cameras recorded Ray departing the staging area with his cleaning cart and proceeding towards service elevators that provided access to employee areas and loading dock facilities. To security personnel monitoring the footage in real time, Ray's movements appeared completely routine. Nothing suggested that he was transporting the largest theft in the casino's history. The service elevator carried Ray and his stolen cargo to lower levels of the casino, where employee parking and service access provided exit routes that avoided most security checkpoints and camera coverage. Ray's legitimate access to these areas through his cleaning duties meant that his presence attracted no attention from security personnel. By 4 a.m., Ray had successfully transported $12.9 million from the casino's secure staging area to a rental vehicle positioned in the employee parking structure. The transfer from his cleaning cart to the vehicle took several minutes, but was conducted in areas with minimal security oversight, allowing Ray to complete his criminal operation without detection. Ray's departure from casino property at 4:15 a.m. appeared routine to security systems that recorded thousands of employee exits during shift changes and end-of-work activities. His modified cleaning cart was returned to its normal storage location, showing no obvious evidence of its role in the largest internal theft in casino history. The sophistication and precision of Ray's criminal operation had been perfected through months of careful observation, technical preparation, and psychological conditioning. His transformation from invisible service worker to master criminal was complete, but the most challenging phase of his plan was just beginning. Permanent escape from his previous life before discovery of the theft triggered intensive criminal investigation. Ray's vanishing act began even before the discovery of his theft, as he had carefully planned his escape to occur during the natural confusion that would follow the weekend's heavy cash processing activities. His departure from Las Vegas was timed to provide maximum delay before investigators could identify him as the primary suspect in the missing $12.9 million. The abandoned cleaning cart found in its normal storage location showed no obvious signs of modification or criminal use. Ray's technical skills had allowed him to restore the equipment to its original configuration, eliminating evidence that might immediately identify the theft methodology. To casual inspection, the cart appeared unchanged from its routine cleaning duties. Ray's employee locker was found completely empty, with all personal belongings removed and no evidence of hasty departure. His methodical preparation had included gradual elimination of any items that might provide investigative leads about his plans, destinations, or criminal associates. The emptiness was complete and deliberate rather than rushed. His 2007 Honda Accord was discovered abandoned in a Henderson parking garage approximately 18 hours after the theft was discovered. The vehicle had been thoroughly cleaned of fingerprints and personal items, but investigators found partial prints on a mop handle in the trunk and an empty duffel bag that suggested its use for transporting large amounts of cash. But these minimal traces provided no meaningful leads about Ray's subsequent transportation arrangements or intended destination. The vehicle's location in Henderson suggested possible travel toward Arizona or California, but the area's complex highway system provided access to multiple routes that could lead anywhere in the southwestern United States. Financial investigation revealed that Ray had been systematically liquidating his minimal, legitimate assets for several weeks before the theft, converting everything to cash and closing accounts that might provide tracking opportunities. His bank account showed a balance of less than $200, with recent activities indicating preparation for permanent departure rather than temporary absence. The thoroughness of Ray's financial preparation suggested criminal sophistication that exceeded what investigators typically associated with service industry employees. His elimination of traceable assets and establishment of portable wealth indicated advanced planning that demonstrated understanding of law enforcement investigation procedures. More concerning was the discovery that Ray had apparently acquired false identity documentation that would allow him to establish residence and employment under assumed names. Intelligence gathered through associates revealed that Ray had researched methods for obtaining fake identification and had made cash purchases of items that suggested preparation for identity change. The false identity preparation indicated that Ray's criminal activities had been planned as permanent life transformation rather than temporary criminal opportunity. His intention appeared to be complete escape from his previous existence, rather than simply theft of casino assets for immediate personal use. Border surveillance and financial monitoring systems were activated throughout the southwestern United States, but revealed no evidence that Ray had attempted to cross international boundaries or access banking services under his legitimate identity. Intelligence analysis suggested that he had successfully assumed a false identity that provided anonymity while maintaining access to his stolen wealth. The $12.9 million in stolen cash and chips presented unique challenges for both Ray and law enforcement. Cash could be spent or deposited gradually without triggering immediate detection, but casino chips required conversion through networks that specialized in gaming currency exchange. Intelligence from organized crime specialists suggested that such conversion typically occurred through underground markets that charged substantial fees, but provided untraceable transactions. The investigation expanded to include multiple states as agents pursued leads suggesting that Ray might have relocated to areas with lower costs of living where his stolen wealth would provide comfortable lifestyle for extended periods. Rural areas, small cities, and regions with limited law enforcement presence all received investigative attention. Private investigators hired by the casino's insurance companies continued their own search efforts using resources and methods unavailable to government agencies. However, their investigations proved equally unsuccessful in locating Ray or recovering any portion of the stolen assets. More than 18 months after Ray Dorsey orchestrated the theft of $12.9 million through systematic exploitation of casino cleaning procedures, he remains one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives while continuing to evade one of the most comprehensive domestic manhunts in recent American law enforcement history. The investigation expanded rapidly following discovery of Ray's criminal activities, as agents recognized that his sophisticated escape planning and complete elimination of traceable assets indicated criminal capabilities that exceeded typical employee theft cases. The resources deployed for locating Ray reflected both the scale of his theft and the sophistication of his disappearance. Domestic investigation focused initially on areas within driving distance of Las Vegas, where someone with Ray's background might establish residence without attracting unusual attention. Small cities throughout Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah received intensive investigative coverage as agents examined rental records, employment applications, and utility connections that might indicate Ray's presence under assumed identities. The challenge was enormous because Ray's modest lifestyle and service industry background meant that he could blend into working-class communities throughout the American Southwest without creating obvious wealth displays that might attract attention. His stolen millions could be concealed while maintaining the appearance of legitimate employment and normal living standards. Financial monitoring systems established comprehensive surveillance for any activity that might indicate Ray's attempt to access banking services, make large purchases, or engage in financial transactions that could reveal his location. However, the sophistication of his disappearance suggested that he understood these monitoring capabilities and had planned accordingly. The most intensive investigation occurred in rural areas where cost of living was low enough that Ray's stolen wealth could support comfortable lifestyle for decades, while maintaining anonymity among populations that valued privacy and asked few questions about newcomers' backgrounds or financial resources. Agricultural communities, mining towns, and rural service centers throughout the western United States all received investigative attention as potential destinations for someone seeking to disappear permanently. However, the volume of such communities and the ease with which someone could establish residence under false identities made comprehensive investigation extremely resource-intensive. Interstate cooperation involved law enforcement agencies throughout multiple regions, with particular focus on areas that Ray might reasonably reach within hours of his departure from Las Vegas. The coordination required sharing intelligence about investigation techniques, suspect identification procedures, and financial monitoring capabilities that could detect Ray's presence. The casino industry implemented immediate reforms following Ray's theft, recognizing that traditional security procedures had failed to prevent sophisticated internal theft by employees who understood operational vulnerabilities. Enhanced oversight, reduced individual access to secure areas, and improved monitoring of cleaning staff became standard practices throughout Las Vegas and other gaming centers. But the reforms came too late to prevent Ray's successful theft or to provide leads that might assist in his capture. The vulnerabilities that he had exploited were systematically eliminated, but his criminal success had already provided him with resources and time advantages that made recovery extremely unlikely. Insurance companies paid claims exceeding $20 million to cover the direct theft, investigative costs, security system upgrades, and business interruption losses resulting from Ray's criminal activities. The policies included provisions for continued recovery efforts and substantial rewards for information leading to his apprehension. The rewards offered for Ray's capture eventually reached $500,000, reflecting both the scale of his theft and the frustration that law enforcement agencies experienced in their unsuccessful efforts to locate him. However, the rewards generated no credible leads despite widespread publicity and law enforcement appeal for public assistance. Criminal profilers developed psychological assessments suggesting that Ray's combination of intelligence, patience, and social isolation made him ideally suited for maintaining hidden identity over extended periods. His lack of close personal relationships eliminated the social connections that often lead to fugitive apprehension, while his service industry background provided skills for blending into working-class communities. The most troubling aspect of Ray's successful escape was the demonstration that sophisticated crimes could still be committed and escaped in an era of comprehensive surveillance and advanced investigation techniques. His success provided a template that other criminals might attempt to replicate, threatening the security procedures that protected billions in casino assets. Law enforcement agencies developed new investigation protocols specifically designed for cases involving sophisticated employee theft, recognizing that traditional approaches were inadequate for crimes that exploited organizational trust, relationships, and internal procedural knowledge. The insurance industry implemented new risk assessment procedures for casino coverage, reflecting increased understanding of internal theft vulnerabilities and the potential scale of losses that sophisticated employee criminals could generate. Premium costs increased substantially as insurers recognized that traditional security measures were insufficient protection against determined internal threats. But perhaps the most significant impact was the destruction of institutional trust between casinos and their service employees. The fundamental assumption that cleaning and maintenance staff could be trusted with access to secure areas had been shattered by someone who represented the ideal of reliable service industry employment. Ray Dorsey had spent 8 years being invisible to everyone around him, while learning every detail of the systems that protected hundreds of millions of dollars. His patience, intelligence, and complete lack of suspicious behavior had made him the perfect employee until the moment he decided to become the perfect criminal. Whether Ray Dorsey lives comfortably somewhere with his stolen $12.9 million or eventually face consequences that will never be publicly known remains one of the most compelling mysteries in modern American crime. The night porter who had cleaned up after everyone else had ultimately cleaned out the casino itself, proving that sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who remain invisible until they choose to disappear forever. The investigation continues, but after 18 months without meaningful leads, Ray Dorsey has achieved something remarkable in the modern era of comprehensive surveillance and advanced investigation techniques. He has successfully vanished into the vastness of American society while carrying enough stolen wealth to remain hidden indefinitely. In the end, the Invisible Man had made himself and $12.9 million disappear so completely that even the most sophisticated law enforcement resources in the world haven't been able to find a trace of either. Ray Dorsey had proven that sometimes the perfect crime is possible for someone with enough patience, intelligence, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for the ultimate payday.